Thank you, Priyasha. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this particular gathering and this seminar is of seminal importance to all of us here. It addresses a region that has been looked at from so many different lenses that we thought that it would be a good idea to try and combine as many of these perspectives and points of view as is possible. And even as I welcome you, therefore, to what I'm sure will be a day of exploration into these multifaceted lenses, I think that it would be important if we were to ask ourselves how maritime spaces per se are perceived and manifest themselves in the contemporary international order, and then examine some transformative effects that occur when nation-states interact with these maritime spaces. Now, in actual fact, India itself is relatively understudied from a maritime lens, and so too is the case with a large number of countries that are even more islandic in their geographical conformation than is India. India is to all intents and purposes, an island nation. I rather fear that we lack an adequate amount of islanders. And in other countries that are of the greater Bay of Bengal region, the number of islanders are many. Sometimes the island is not quite ready to absorb so many islanders. How then ought we to capture the norms, the beliefs, the values of each of these states that surround the Bay of Bengal or are washed by its waters? The range is large, and we are singularly privileged to have a set of interlocutors throughout the day that will hopefully guide us through the many labyrinthine corridors of the mind that exist as we examine this maritime space. The fact that we have Her Excellency the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka in our midst is only an additional jewel in the crown that has been crafted so carefully by Professor Hindol Sengupta, who's sitting there on my left, and who has crafted many such crowns in the course of his very distinguished career, of which we will speak by and by. But given the huge dependence, for example, of India upon its maritime spaces in general and upon the Bay of Bengal in particular, it is important for us, even in the welcoming segment of this particular day, to remember that state imaginations of how we look at spaces, how we examine them, how we internalize them, and how we externalize them are products of at least three variables. The first is the state's interpretation of history, and that is linked with the spaces around it. The second comprises the state's intentions vis-à-vis the opportunities that it sees, and the third, of course, are the material capabilities and capacities of the state. In the traditional fashion, we tend to look at these in isolation. Either we talk about culture, or we talk about security, or we talk about economics. And then we seldom realize that geopolitics is actually the amalgamation of each of these elements. And there is no ability that we have or should have of being able to segregate geopolitics, geoeconomics, and geostrategy and place them in one horizontal typological plane, because one is a subset of the other. And yet, when we look at the amount of interest that there is in the Bay of Bengal, within India, we are encouraged. There are centers of Bay of Bengal studies extending from Assam and extending all the way to Nalanda University. There is the O.P. Jindal and Global Order, which has a reasonable amount of focus upon this very area, and I'm very privileged to say that the National Maritime Foundation too is in the vanguard of this particular exploration. How then should we welcome you adequately? Firstly, what are the frills that we should adopt? I personally think that you are here because of your established expertise, because of your established interest, and your acumen in many of these areas. We are very privileged to have with us the international liaison officers who are here from the IFC IOR. We have officers and senior functionaries from the National Defense College, from the National Maritime Security Coordinator's Office, and of course we have very senior guides and philosophers and mentors of ours. I would like to recognize in this regard Commodore Ranjit Rai, who has long been a proponent of looking at maritime security holistically. And I say this word maritime security with a certain amount of trepidation as well, because I fear that every time we use this, we tend to fly off into military maritime security alone. And yet, the fact that each of you is here present today, whether you come from a security background or an economic one or a diplomatic one, or for that matter, a cultural one, is reflective of the fact that you find a need for us to be able to exchange views, amalgamate views, and come to a consolidated whole of imagination. History, ladies and gentlemen, will forgive us for many, many things, but one thing history will not forgive us for, and that is failures of imagination. And if we cannot imagine spaces more holistically than merely looking at them from a single lens, then we would be guilty of quite such a failure. It is not my intention to belabor any of these topics. It is my intention certainly to afford you a very warm and heartfelt welcome to this seminar, and I hope that you will participate actively in as much as the experts here have brought and will bring together perspectives that you possibly would need to reflect upon. Be agitated. Try and not have too much good order and naval discipline. Try and be untidy. The more untidy we are, the better will be our engagement. The more structured and formal we are, the poorer we will be for it. So with those somewhat contradictory remarks, let me reaffirm the fact that we are over the moon with joy to see as many of you as there are here today, and that I can promise you that we will be able to put together a presentation set, a conversational set, in which you will not be passive listeners, but in which you will be participants in every respect. With those few words, I would like to once again, for the third time, welcome each and every one of you, and tell you that hang on to your seats, since we haven't been allowed to give you seat belts, but the day is an exciting one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.